I'm Bharti, your host from Startup Yoga. I'm first in migrant from India, living in Australia. I've been privileged to know highly experienced and successful business leaders in Australia, and hence wanted to share the knowledge of the amazing mentors who will be visiting our podcast, Startup Yoga with Bharti. For today's episode, we have a very special guest, Fabiola Campbell. Fabiola brings with her a diversity which every business owner or professional can only aspire to achieve. She is the founder of Professional Migrant Women and is currently helping migrant women to get the best coaching, which will enable them to be work ready in Australia. It is not only a job for Fabiola, but also her life's mission to grow migrant women's visibility and representation across Australian corporate landscape through meaningful employment, career progression, and leadership development. Let's start our podcast with Fabiola and hear an inspiring story. Welcome to the Startup Yoga, Fabiola.
Thank you so much for having me, Bharti. It's a pleasure to be here and to share with your audience. And thank you also for that warm introduction. That was very lovely.
Awesome. So let's start with some fun facts. Where were you born and where were you raised?
Oh, well, that is a good question. So despite the beautiful accent, I was born here in Australia. But I was raised in Venezuela, and that's where my family is from. So my parents spent 2 years in Australia. My dad was studying. I was born here in Australia 4 months before the family went back to Venezuela. So born in Australia and raised in Venezuela.
Awesome. And so when did you come back to Australia then?
Right. So I was brought up hearing amazing things about Australia and how beautiful it was, and all the opportunities that you had in here. So since a very early age, my dream was to come to Australia. But I did all my schooling in Venezuela and my university studies, and then after I graduated from uni, I did work in Venezuela for 3 years. And then at the age of 27, I moved to Australia.
Oh, wow. So what was your first job?
In Australia sorry?
No, just what was the first job?
Yeah, so back in Venezuela, I graduated as a criminologist. And
wow, that is a very interesting fact. I did not know that.
Yes. And see, one of the things that I've always made me feel curious and I grew up a passion for was human behavior, and also being able to make an impact and help people out. So as a criminologist, what I wanted to do was to create impact in the community so we could not only reduce crime but prevent crime by having strong communities. And my first job was in local government in crime prevention.
Wow. Okay. That is like, for a young 21-year-old to have that kind of thinking, it's amazing. Like, it's really commendable. So, when you came to Australia at the age of 27, as a migrant, did you face any challenges? And especially, in terms of finding a new job, given that you had such a amazing background, did you find it hard to find a job, or what was the experience like?
Yeah, so I think the main challenge that I faced when I came to Australia was my lack of English skills. So I thought I could speak English, but very soon I realized that I didn't, and I had to go to school and learn English. And again, I thought, okay, yeah, I might need to do a little bit of English, but I'm going to be able to pick up the language really fast, and I'm going to be able to get a job. And that wasn't the truth. It took way longer than I expected to feel ready to get a professional job. Um, and then it took me many more years to actually feel comfortable with the way I speak and my accent. So it took me about 3 years to get my first professional job here in Australia. That was very frustrating because, back in Venezuela, I was independent. I had a job. I could make a contribution, and not being able to do that here was quite frustrating.
And do you think the migrants who move in now in 2021 or 2022, they still feel the same issues in finding the job? And if yes, then why do they still face the same issues?
Well, I think so. I need to put some context into this answer, right? So for me, I was an Australian citizen coming back to Australia. So I didn't have any of the visa limitations to find a job.
Okay.
However, I think that other than my visa status, or well, I didn't have a visa, my residency status, I was a migrant for
Right.
all intent and purpose, right?
Right.
I mean, I didn't have any connections in here. I didn't know how was the job market in Australia. I didn't know how to do a resume, cover letter. I didn't know the interview style in Australia. So I just didn't know how to find a job in Australia. And I didn't know that, I assumed that it would be similar to what I used to do in Venezuela. And, um, that wasn't the truth.
I know we all assume that it's going to be pretty much the same across the whole world, given,
Yeah.
we all are really tech savvy. And yeah, I exactly know what you mean.
Yeah, so I believe that those are some of the barriers or struggles that a lot of migrants still face nowadays. And probably the main one is the lack of networks. See, there is one thing that we take for granted in our countries, and it is our networks. See, I come across many migrants that say to me, "Oh, but I never used to network in my country," And what people don't understand is that there are some natural networks that come with, you growing up in certain place. So I often ask,
and maybe they're not just your own networks, they could be networks of your friends, families, your mentors, everyone.
Absolutely, that's right. So, and I often ask people, where, how did you find your first job? Maybe you were at school, at high school, something, right? And they say, oh yeah, well, I found a job in my mom's or my parents' shop. Okay, that counts as work experience, right? So you already have somebody that can vouch for you, right? Or they say, oh, I found a job with my friend's, my dad's friend's business, right? Or my neighbor gave me a job or something like that. And people don't realize that those are your networks, your primary networks. And of course, you build from there, you never get, I mean, very seldom you go from no job to dream job, right?
Right.
You have to work your way up, either by doing some studies or doing some apprenticeships or some kind of work experience, and then landing the job that you want in your ideal industry. So when people move to Australia, they lose all of that.
Right.
They lose all their networks, all their connections, and they don't have anybody to guide them through that process anymore. So I think that's probably one of the main losses for migrants, and therefore one of the main barriers.
So, for all the international students, what should be or could be done right from the college that they will prepare, that will prepare them for the job market as much as the local students?
Networking. So on the back of that, absolutely networking. But I feel that they need to understand what networking means as well. I come across, I do a lot of networking, right? And I encourage the participants in our programs to do networking as well. And people have certain ideas of what networking should be, and sometimes they come prepared with business cards, or they have their elevator pitch ready, or they just want to impress. Whereas I believe that networking is all about building relationships.
So give us an example of, what's the right way to do it, or I mean, I know there's not like a right or a wrong way, but then, the way it can be done.
I feel that everything starts with a conversation, and probably, the next step for me is inviting somebody for a coffee chat. And the beauty of this day and age is, and I didn't have this possibility back then, is that we have tools like LinkedIn, right? So through LinkedIn, I can, start building my online network and online community, and two, start reaching out to those people. So if I want to work in the, I don't know, say the mining industry, I can go to LinkedIn and I can find professionals in that area, and I can start connecting with them. And when people accept my connection request, then I can send a note and say, hey, I saw your profile. I think you have a very interesting profile, and I would love to have a chat with you and see if I can learn something from what you do. So and if you start doing that during your studies, you will build a much better understanding of what the industry is like, of what the job market is like, of what is required to perform certain jobs. And that knowledge itself is really, really valuable.
And, frankly, I've seen, especially out here in Australia, when you reach out to people, they do respond. Whether they want to meet or not is a secondary thing, but then they definitely come back to you with an answer saying, yeah, let's catch up. I'll give you 20, 25 minutes. We can hop onto Zoom.
Yeah.
I mean, they're pretty responsive that way. So, that.
And can I add something? Because
Sure.
There is a precursor to that. And that is having the courage of adding people on LinkedIn, right?
Oh,
so
yeah.
I have come across with a lot of people that are terrified of sending an invitation on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
And what underpins that is the fear of rejection.
Right.
And I think that the one thing you need to get over is the fact that the fear of being rejected. Guess what? Yes, you will be rejected, but not everybody is going to reject you.
Right.
So just go for it. The ones well, what if you are rejected by somebody that you don't know?
Yeah.
Why should I care?
Yeah.
I'm more interested in the people that actually want to add me to their networks, and that I can have a conversation with.
Right.
So getting over your fear of rejection is an essential part of this process.
Right. And, the way we got introduced, like I met somebody at a party, and, she specifically, as soon as she, came across as to what am I doing, she's like, oh, you must be Fabiola. And, that is the beauty of maybe LinkedIn, I would say. And she introduced me she introduced me to you on LinkedIn. That was, and since then, we've been connected. That's like a beautiful journey. So, also students can maybe reach out to people who already have a few connects to introduce them.
Yes. And again, if I go and talk to somebody in my industry, I always can ask the question, oh, is there anybody that you think I could connect with? Is there anybody that you could introduce me to? Yeah.
It's just the courage, I guess, to take the first step.
Yes. And oftentimes as well, look, the other thing is that when we approach those networking meetings, I think we should go without any expectations, I mean, the expectation should be build the relationship, finding out a little bit more of the person that I'm speaking to.
Yeah.
And I tell you what, oftentimes what happens is that people go away, and probably 1 week or 1 month or 3 months down the track, they say, oh, there is an opportunity here. And I met this Fabiola person, and
Right.
maybe she will be great for it, you know?
Right.
So it's not an immediate thing,
Right.
uh, but it is about, leaving a mark, if you like, or
Right.
staying in people's mind in a way,
Right. Right.
leaving a good impression.
Right. So, that again brings me to one more thing. So that, there are a lot of women. So like yourself, you had an amazing work background, you had the degree, and, you could easily come and get a job out here in Australia. But that wasn't the case. So how can a woman make a comeback in the job market again, either after taking a break or, when they're coming to a completely different country, or a lot of times it happens that a woman has had a baby and she's had a gap of about 18 months to 5 years, depending on how she wants to, what kind of gap she wants to take. But, how can they make a comeback?
Look, I think it depends on the size of the gap, and also depends on what you've been doing during the gap. So, say people that, so if a woman in this case, right, migrates to Australia, and she has to study English or do something in the meantime, right, before she finds the first job, she can show, well, I've been studying, I've been developing myself, and I think that's always a very valuable proposition for a prospective employer, right? If you've been at home taking care of your family or a family member, I think it's also a valid reason to have a gap. Most people, in my opinion, and we have asked this question to many recruiters, what's going on with the gap? And in general, people don't mind the gap,
Oh, okay.
as long as you can address it. Like, okay, in my CV, I work until this year, and then I have a gap, and now I'm doing this, right? So what happened during the gap? Well, I looked after my family, or I was doing a course, or I was studying, or whatever it is. Um, I think, particularly here in Australia, I think that people are quite reasonable
Yeah,
from
yeah,
that
yeah.
point of
I've
view.
noticed that. Yeah,
They understand that life is much more than having a job,
yeah.
and they themselves might have other priorities in their life. So I think that acknowledging the gap is the most important thing. And if you feel that you need to refresh your skills or knowledge, then do a course, do a short course. Again, if you have a degree, 4 or 5 years of study, you don't need to do another full degree. But
Right.
maybe a short 6 month certificate course will give you enough skills to go and tackle your next job.
Right. Okay. Now, you run an amazing organization, Professional Migrant Women. Tell us a little bit about more. Tell us a little bit more about it. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. About 3 years ago, I started Professional Migrant Women with the intention of helping or closing the gap between migration and professional employment for women. So one of the things that I noticed was that there were many qualified women with a bit or a lot of experience from their countries, but they didn't have the confidence or the know-how to get a professional job in Australia. And usually they were doing, uh, you know, waitressing or cleaning or babysitting or these kind of jobs. That, by the way, there's nothing wrong with these kind of jobs. The only thing is that these women wanted more.
Right.
And that is the difference. See, like, if I also met other women that started cleaning houses, and they set up their own cleaning businesses, and they are doing it really well, and they're happy about it. So no shame on that, right?
No,
Nothing wrong with it, and it's a meaningful way to earn a living. But what if you feel that you have more to give? What if you feel that you have talents? What if you feel that you have knowledge and skills that you can put to a better use? And that you can use the skills that you already have into a different job? Well, that's where we could help, because it's not about teaching people how to do a job. It's about teaching people how to find a job or how to secure that job. So when I said to you at the beginning, when I came to Australia, I assumed that finding a job in Australia was going to be the same as finding a job in Venezuela. That's not the case. So what I had to do was to learn how to do it here.
Right. So in the professional migrant woman, you do run a lot of seminars, you do a lot of strategy classes. Can you cover a little bit and tell us more about them? Okay, what is it that you cover in them, or how do you structure them?
Yeah, so what we do currently, we have a program for those women that don't have the first job, and what we do is that so it's a 12-week program, a mentoring program, where people learn all the skills that they need to get a job in Australia. And we start from the very basics of understanding who you are, what your values are, and what can you offer. So it's about verbalizing that, and also building a narrative that is congruent with the Australian market. So we have a mentoring program for that. Now, one of the things that had happened since we started Professional Migrant Women was that, at the beginning was about closing the gap between migration and professional employment. As time went by, we realized, well, it's also about maximizing the potential and contribution of these women, how they can add value to our community with the skills that they have. And then as time went by, we also realized, well, for women to have an opportunity to secure jobs and make an impact and a contribution, we need to have representation. We need to have people like us in positions where decisions are made, because they are the ones that will appreciate our value and will give us opportunities, right? That's the whole thing about representation. And by the way, when we talk about representation, it's a representation of all diversity, not just professional migrant women, but it could be people with disability, Aboriginal people, LGBTQI, all the people, younger people, anything. We just need to see people like us represented in the positions where decisions are made. So, and that is the new focus of Professional Migrant Women: create visibility and representation of professional migrant women in places of decision making. Because once we achieve that representation, then we will have better chances of achieving equality. And that leads me to the other set of activities that we do at Professional Migrant Women, which is professional development. And we also do some panel discussions, and we lend our platform both to women that want to step up and serve, and the women that want to learn from those role models that we have.
Okay. So, and you help people with courses, with panel discussions. So how important do you think it is to have a mentor, to guide you in the professional journey? Because they already do have the degree, they're skilled, but how important is it to have a mentor?
Yeah, look, I think not only having a mentor, a mentor will be ideal, but some of those relationships could be costly, or it will be hard to find a good match for you. I think the most important thing is to have a community, or to surround yourself with people that want to achieve the same goal as you do.
Right.
Along the way, you will meet your mentors, and these mentors could be formal or informal, right? So I have learned from many women around me who I consider my mentors, but I've never called them that, you know. But
Right.
they are a call away for me to reach out and probably clarify something. Yeah. And that's what a mentor is, right? Something that is a few steps ahead of you and can see the they can see the trajectory, they can see what the steps are, and that you are not able to see from your point of view, you know. So even somebody who is a few steps away from where you are, they could be great mentors. In fact, sometimes I feel that, say for example, you are a junior person and you want to get mentored by a CEO, that is a huge gap.
Right.
And probably might not be as relevant for you.
Right.
But maybe the best mentor for you is the person in the next level up.
Yeah.
You can relate to that person way more, and that person will be able to give you the hints that you need to take your career to the next level.
Right. Okay. Now, why do you think women are highly underrepresented in high-paying blue-collar jobs, especially like, say, construction, manufacturing, mining, etc.? Because they can be pretty good at those. And, given that they have degrees these days, they can speak the language, they're tough. Why do you think that is?
Oh, well, I think if we take a look, I think this is a broader view that we need to take, and I believe that it's all about societal expectations or traditional gender roles. So I think in this kind of industry, women have been traditionally underrepresented.
Right.
And there is an idea that, women are fragile, or that they're not tough enough for these kind of jobs, that they're not built for these, that they are too emotional, or whatever label people want to give to women. It is so, as industry dominated mainly by male, they have also built systems and structures that suit male lifestyles or ways of working. So we know that, again, traditionally the women are the ones that provide most of the care at home, and not that these women don't want to work professionally, but they might want more flexibility at work.
Yeah.
What if instead of advertising full-time position in this industry, we can advertise part-time position of job shares? I'm sure that there will be more women and men interested in such positions.
Right.
So I think it's about approaching the job structure in a different way that is more inclusive, not only for women, but for people from, diverse backgrounds.
Okay. So what advice would you give young women of today, starting their careers?
Young women in Australia.
Anywhere, anywhere, when they're just about to start their careers, when they're studying, that, okay, this is what you should do, this is what you should aspire to do. Any advice?
Yeah. And again, I'm going to say young women in Australia. I'm going to create that context, because I know that this advice might not be relevant for women within different cultures, but I think is about believing that you are an equal party, and as such, take space and make room for you on the table. So I think one of the things that probably hold people back or women back is that idea that that many women in different cultures grow up with, and that is that women are less than. And in Australia, we have the opportunity to show up and be who we want to be.
Right.
So I think it's important to understand the context that this country provides us and take those chances.
Right. Okay. Now we come to a rapid fire question round.
Okay.
So we're going to be asked whatever comes to your mind. The first is what you have to answer. There's no time to think.
Okay.
Okay. So what advice will you give your 22-year self today?
I would say believe that things are possible, believe in the possibility, explore the possibility.
Okay, if not this, what else would you be doing?
Ooh, that's a tough one.
Yeah.
And I'm going to tell you something. I think about these often, and I always come back to these, So I don't know, maybe if you ask me in 5 years' time, my thinking will be different. But right now, this is the only thing that I want to be doing right now.
Awesome. Okay. So you can share all of them, or you can just share any one, whichever comes to your mind. So any favorite columns, books, or blogs which you read very regularly, which inspire you?
I do like topics more so than particular authors. And I do like reading about feminism and equality, gender equality.
Okay.
And that's my go-to.
Okay. And one technology, any piece of technology or any technology company, which is your favorite these days?
That's an easy one. For me is the Google Suite. I love the flexibility of the Google Suite. I have it on my phone, I have it on my computer, I can access it from everywhere, and I can see, my files, my emails, I can create different things. So I love the Google Suite. I love the flexibility of the Google Suite. Yeah.
Awesome. Okay. Now you do a lot of events. So your pick, online events or in-person events?
Oh, interesting. I was talking to somebody about that this morning, and I will have to say, it depends on what events you are holding.
You have to pick one.
No. Look, for information, I will go for online.
Okay.
And for connection or experience, I will go face to face.
Okay. Now, before we sign off, one key takeaway of your life that your listeners should definitely know and learn from.
Well, I think that probably for me, in my journey, discovering who I was and owning every part of myself has been very, very important. Especially that part of owning, being proud of every part of you. And as a migrant, I really wanted to be perceived for anything but being a migrant. But the day I embraced that, and I realized, that my journey made me who I am. That day, I started to feel proud of that part of me. I integrated it, and now, it's is part of my brand, as in personal brand. I love my accent. I love what I represent. And I think that's why people feel identified with what I do.
Right. Awesome. Awesome. Okay. So it's been an amazing conversation with you, Fabiola. You've also showed us how to overcome diversities, how to be bold with our decisions, and how to carry the conviction to reach our goals. Make sure you subscribe to our podcast, guys, Startup Yoga, and we will be back soon with another very dynamic leader to inspire you to achieve your goals. Signing off, I'm Bharti. Thank you. Thank you, Fabiola.
Thank you.